welcome to Tom and Dave Discover DotVVM. My name is Thomas.
My name is Dave.
And we decided to make this new live show because the previous format of .vvm community meetups was a lot of slides and just a few demos. So we wanted to try this new concept where we will be doing almost no slides. Actually, we have zero slides prepared for today, but we would like to show you an application David has created on Update Conference Prague this November. So
Yes.
you have been at the .vvm booth and you have been live coding. There were a couple of people watching you. So what is the application about?
Yes, I wanted to show .vvm in an environment where the application is really small, something you can write in 2 days because the update conference is just 2 days. And I wanted something that people could come by and watch and see how it's being built. So we started with nothing. We didn't even have an idea of what we're gonna build. Everything was set up so that we can build something. So I had empty pages prepared and I built this little application we're gonna show you today.
Okay, so let's look at the app itself. It's quite simple, but it shows a couple of concepts that we have in .vvm. So we will dig in the code to explain how it works.
So it's a really small application, just one page with a banner on the top saying what we're building. We're building an app.vvm, and it's a little chatbot where you ask Mr. Riganti some questions, and Mr. Riganti, like an 8-ball magic predictor, asks ChatGPT something, and what it returns is what Mr. Riganti says. So we can ask Mr. Riganti what is .vvm, and if we wait a bit, we'll get an answer.
Okay, so let's do it. I will just hide this preview of how we look like because it's hiding one of the buttons in the application. So see you in a few few minutes. But so the question is, what is .vvm? So we can click on this ask method button, and it takes some time until the API starts responding and generating the answer. However, as you will see, the answer will start appearing as ChatGPT would be producing it. So I will.
Yes, and to make the wait time bearable, we added animations to the responses and fun little emojis that are showing.
Yeah. So you can see that it's appearing gradually, and there is some formatting. You can see there are code examples. There are a lot of emojis, of course, because ChatGPT is trained to use emojis a lot, and also there are bullet points. So how this is created?
Well, actually, we asked ChatGPT to answer in Markdown. And then we created a Markdown renderer using a very simple JavaScript library that just parses the Markdown into a format that we can read. And then it's styled with Tailwind. So we're using Tailwind sample styling for Markdown. And everything you see here is just one simple Markdown file. Not file, but one simple Markdown text. And it's styled using very simple JavaScript.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just like to repeat, because not everybody is familiar with OpenAI API endpoints. So basically, you send them the prompt, which you will see in a few minutes, and the question of the user. And it will start because generating the entire response could take a couple of seconds, as you could see. So it's using, I think, WebSockets internally to send you the fragments of the text. So as you saw that the text as was appearing, it's just as we receive it from the API, we will push it to the page using SignalR. And because it's formatted as a markdown, then we need to translate markdown to HTML. So we are using a JavaScript library where you will put markdown and it will convert it to HTML, and then we are just updating one div element with this contents. And also there is another library to do this syntax highlighting for .vvm and for HTML and for C# code fragments. So that's the things from which we David composed this application.
Yes.
So let's see it in the code. So let me switch to Visual Studio, and as you can see, the project is not that complicated. There is just one page where everything takes place. So this messaging connection, what is that?
Well, this is a part of our business spec suite of controls, which is paid components in .vvm. And one of them is a very simple SignalR connection that connects to a service URL, which SignalR uses to communicate. And as we'll see in the setup, we will register this simple chat hub, as we can see in the folder hubs. And as we connect to it, we'll get messages with method names. And those method names are the types of messages we're receiving. So as we can see, when the assistant message started is when we start thinking, and we set the streaming answer as the thinking emojis, and we set up is loading through so that we have a reactivity there, so that we can show the green buttons and everything. And every delta is one of the updates. So it streams tokens back to us using SignalR, and every token is added to the streaming answer and then passed through the JavaScript to render the markdown. So it's a really simple setup, a very nice, just very nice, just simple SignalR, nothing too extreme. And I was able to build this in like few minutes.
Basically because the API is giving us the fragments of the answer, and we need to push them to the client from the server. That's why we need SignalR, because otherwise the page would have to periodically check, is there something new, like to make, it's called polling, but there would be some delays, and it would probably ask too many times. So if this application would be used by a lot of users, probably there would be performance issues on the server. So SignalR, basically the page establishes a connection to the server, and from the server you can push messages like that with some parameters like this, for example, and you can update the page while the user is looking at that page. Here is this assistant message completed, which will probably unlock the UI, so you can ask some next question. And there is also streaming response content part edit update. It's some.
This is I think one of the first ones we get. So we reset the streaming answer, and then we get the started. So we start to think. So we set up the message as the thinking emojis. I think it's just named like this because I believe that OpenAI library sends us these types of messages, so I just put the type into the method name, not thinking about it much. So this isn't something I named.
Yeah, I see. I think it's because sometimes ChatGPT can produce answer which contains some text and some image or some other types of content, like they say content part. So I think that we are expecting just message with one content part, which is the text. So once we get this message, we'll just reset the streaming answer to an empty string. Okay.
Yeah, and the whole setup is really nice with the usage of static commands. So we just update what we need, and we don't need to refresh the entire page. So we just update the streaming answer, and that's it.
Yeah, I see. Actually, I wanted to start with Tailwind, but once we have, because we started talking about SignalR, let's switch the order of things. So let's see this component. It connects to this hubs/AI URL.
Yes.
And we have this SignalR hub, which is here, and it needs to be registered here in program CS like this, map hub, chat hub with this URL. And this hub should somehow dispatch the, it should somehow handle this communication. And
Yes.
so how this works, because this is just an empty class.
Exactly. We don't even need the OpenAI response client there. It doesn't do anything, so we can right now just delete it.
Okay. So let's fix that,
That was
in production
Yeah,
during
exactly.
live stream. It's my favorite type of changes we will do.
Exactly.
Okay, so
when we go back to the default page, we can see that there are things being added, I think.
Which part?
This.
Here?
When we click on the
Okay.
button, we have a chat service that asks something.
That's...
And this chat service is within the services. So
okay,
we'll go to the chat service.
Yeah. So we need to go here just to wrap up. So this will connect to this chat hub. Chat hub doesn't contain any methods because the client doesn't call any method on the server, because starting the or submitting the question is done not using SignalR, but using a static command, which we saw here. So like we don't need to call anything on the server using SignalR. We could, but we don't need to do that. So and then from the server we are using this connection just one way to push messages from the server to the client.
Yes.
Okay.
We just basically use the chat hub as a bridge between the different parts of the front end, basically. And so it doesn't need to do anything.
Now there are a couple of things. If you didn't work with SignalR, for example, there is an unconnected async method which you can override. So you can, for example, check for the user's permission, or you can add the user to multiple groups, which can also be useful in some situations. But right now we just need an empty SignalR hub. So let's go to the chat service, and it's just a class in the constructor. And I see that you like this new primary constructors feature of C#. It's great. So we need iHub context. Which is what is iHub context?
Well, basically, iHub context, it's the context of the hub. So if we want to pass the messages through this bridge we've created, we create a context for it. And as we can see later, we're allowed to send to certain clients or send to all clients some type of message. This is a really simple setup. Probably in production code, this would look completely different because we don't really need to publish it anywhere. So basically in our local host, it just sends the messages to all the different clients.
Yeah. Okay. So
and we don't need to select or pick one of them. So this is just an interface using the chat hub as the bridge, so we can connect to it and send messages and use it basically.
Yeah. So in this demo, we basically push the messages to all clients. So anyone who is looking at that page, they would see the same answer. If I wanted to make it more personal, that you would see only your answer, then probably I implemented that in the past. So I generated some random GUID as a conversation ID or something like that, and I would send it to this method, and then I would send it only to a client who is assigned to a group with this conversation ID. And that's, by the way, what I would probably need this unconnected async override, because I need to read the conversation ID and subscribe the user only to the group for that particular conversation. Okay.
Exactly.
So and we also in program CS we added this service as a singleton. Again, it depends if you need more like stateful approach, but like in this case, it doesn't have any state, so it should be fine. Even this iHub context is a singleton object, so that should be probably fine. Okay, this attribute needs to be here because we are calling it from the static command.
Yes.
And how to inject this service to default.html, because we are using it under this name.
Exactly.
So
we can see on the top that there's add service,
Yeah.
where we can define the service that we want to inject into our view. It's injecting into a view, not into view model or anything. It's doing this in the backend, on the background, basically connecting all of these services and their functions to our code, and allows us to create static commands that call directly this service without needing any complex view model logic. As we'll see later, we don't really have any view model logic there. We basically treat the view model as a data holder, just a bag of data, nothing much about it is interesting. We don't have any functions there, so it's it's extremely simple.
We can look here. You can see there is just a bunch of properties which represent the state of the page, but there's no logic. So basically we have just these flags: is connected, is loading, was jumping, for some animations, and event list, which I think we don't even display it anywhere. It's just some logging of like that you are connected, you get message from the hub and these things.
In the beginning, we just brought the states of the SignalR connection into an event list, so we can see what's happening on the background. We can see some parts of the code still there, like completed and adding connected, disconnected, and things like that.
Yeah, so like we are just updating this collection, but we are not showing it anywhere. We could make maybe some kind of status window to display it. Okay, great. So let's see this logic here. So once you get this user message, you will immediately set assistant message started. You will push this event to the page, and so like here. If we look here, we will set this streaming answer to these emojis and set is loading to true. So that will disable the UI so people cannot post more questions. Okay.
Exactly. And it will work dynamically. It will load instantly, basically, once we call the static command. And it's a really nice reactivity feature.
Yeah, exactly. So then here is the prompt. So
we tried to write a kind of fun prompt, but basically we ended up with not even a correct English prompt, as I can see in the underscored part. The prompt is basically we tried showcase.vvm, so try to write a lot of emoji, some fancy Unicode characters, and when you're writing code, always put the language of the code in the code block. That's one of the things that I found out that ChatGPT sometimes doesn't do because in the code blocks it's for the highlighting. Basically, you can set up what kind of language you're showing, so the highlighting works. And I wanted it to work and be
just to clarify, like if I would like to show that's what we are speaking about. If you want to show a piece of code in Markdown, you need to use these triple backticks and then specify the name of the language, so then the syntax highlighting would work inside. And you can see even the Copilot understands that it's C#, so it's suggesting me some C# code, So that's how the response would look like. So this is the prompt. We are instructing to use Markdown syntax, so the result would be there. And these typos are usually fine because the language models are trained on vast amounts of data. It has seen probably all kinds of typos people can make on the internet because it was trained on all data that are available on the internet. So it must have seen every single typo the humankind ever done. So it will probably deal with that pretty well. So it's not an issue. And here is the question of the user. Here we should be a little bit careful about the prompt injection attacks, because it's quite once you take any user input and embed it in your prompt, that's vulnerability, because then you can there's a favorite sentence like forget all previous instructions, so it could basically reset these things. I've seen a session of Mark Rusinovich on I think it was on Build or Ignite conference, and he had a t-shirt with like forget all or ignore all previous instructions as a joke. So that's just that you should be aware of these kind of attacks and use some services or some approaches tested very well, so it couldn't do much harm. Here is just like responding to the user, so probably it cannot do anything that bad. On the other hand, if you would allow to use function calling, that you would give it a list of functions that ChatGPT can decide to call, then it can start being dangerous, because then ChatGPT can start doing actual things.
Yes, exactly. And we are using ChatGPT 5 Nano, the smallest version of it. And when we when we were playing around with it, it was really simple to get exactly this message. When we asked it enough times to differently to tell us the user prompt or the entire prompt, it was very willing to tell us the entire prompt, which is also quite dangerous when you tell it when you can basically leak the prompt outside. Yeah.
Yeah. So then we call on this response client, which is it's some class from the OpenAI package, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
OpenAI response is OpenAI response client. So we have just installed a NuGet package OpenAI to the project, and we are calling this create response streaming async. And streaming means that it will push us events like these updates, and we need to look at what kind of update is that, and then handle it properly. So this switch is basically doing everything we need. So the most important for us is this delta, because it's a chunk of text, usually just like few letters.
Yes.
And we just take it and send it to the page using this hub context. So this delta is a string, it's the part of the text, and once we get it in the page, we will just append it to this streaming answer.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, great. So let's go back, and this is that message is completed, and this is the content part edit. So this will probably be the first event we get. So we will just like reset the streaming answer, then we will get a bunch of these delta updates, and then we will get this last completed, which will unlock the UI for the user to be able to work with that.
As you can see in the chat hub, there's console line for the type. So I basically went, what type is it giving? Is it giving me when I ask it, or the chat service, not the chat hub? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I basically was like, what type is it gonna give me when I ask a question? And these were all the types that we were getting. So maybe as we can see that the delta updates is updating the text and completed.
Yeah. Here is even some event which we didn't even handle. Content part done update, output item done update, and the response completed. So this one is interesting for us. We were handling these ones, and at the beginning there would probably be that content part edit. Once I'm scrolling using the wheel, but it's still the same line, so it wasn't visible. Yeah, so response created, in progress, output item edit, and this content part edit. So there is a bunch of events, and there is also these error states, which we were lucky to not get. So and we are not handling them in any way. We should probably introduce another kind of message to push it in the page and indicate the error, something like
exactly,
that. Yeah. But who is doing error handling these days? Like, I don't think that it's really important. Just quietly, silently, do not disturb the user with some like freaking errors. I understand this. Okay, great. Yeah. So that's the SignalR part. So this is the way how you can update the page, push events from the server to the page, and this is done using this .vvm business spec messaging package, which is part of .vvm business spec, which is a commercial package, but it's just a tiny wrapper over SignalR. So if you don't want to buy a business spec and you want to stick to the open source part of .vvm, you can just write a couple of lines of JavaScript code that would do the same thing. Yeah, because this control is basically a tiny wrapper over SignalR API. So that's what you can do. Okay, so that was the SignalR. What we have next?
Well, next we'll look at how we styled the entire page, because it's really interesting since .vvm doesn't really have styling other than using Bootstrap for our second part of commercial packages. And I wanted to try to render something using Tailwind because it's long, but I quite enjoy Tailwind because it's like Bootstrap 2, basically. So this is entire page styled with Tailwind, and we can also style the components, as we can see on the bottom of the page, we have the .text box, and it also has Tailwind classes, which, when the component is being rendered, are just passed down to the input, which the text box represents.
Yeah. Basically, the .vvm components in the open source framework, they were designed to be, like, I would say, style agnostic. So they don't come up with any CSS styles. The only exception is the file upload component, which requires just about 10 lines of CSS. But otherwise, the components don't produce any styles, anything like that, and you need to style them on your own. If you use the paid components like Bootstrap for .vvm or .vvm Business Pack, they are shipped with some styles. In case of Bootstrap, it's just Bootstrap.
Yep.
In case of Business Pack, it's our own bunch of styles with CSS variables, so you can restyle them as needed. But the pure .vvm DOT components, they don't have any styles. And for most of the components, you can add your other HTML attributes. So even this placeholder attribute, the text box control doesn't know anything about placeholder. It will just say, okay, I don't know that, so I will just pass it in the output HTML. So this translates to input type text, and this placeholder would be rendered as well. And class is the same story. It will just be passed in the output HTML.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I was quite afraid because I never tried this before. So I didn't know how well it would perform using Tailwind. And with Tailwind being what it is, it builds the different types of classes you need. If you've never worked with Tailwind, that's one of the, I would say, best features, because it builds just what you need. But for that, it needs to basically understand what we're trying to build. And I thought that it wouldn't understand the dot components, but as long as its class equals something, I think it would understand. One of the problems would be probably if we put class and some kind of value binding, where we would define the style somewhere else, and on the page there wouldn't be the text with the actual styling, because then, as we can see in the Tailwind config, we basically just did npx init Tailwind and just did the normal installation and put .html, .master, and .control into the content exports, so it reads them, looks at the styling we're gonna use, and then it creates the styles.css. And it's a really simple setup, it works really well, but it's not made for things like setting up the classes somewhere else and then passing them down. It's really made for basically just styles in the components themselves or in the parts of the HTML themselves.
Maybe, so how the Tailwind actually works? So it will scan these files, and it will look what CSS classes are used there. So it will parse anything class equals something, and based on that, it will generate just the CSS classes it really needs, because otherwise it would have to generate classes for every possible number of that, and there is quite a lot of numbers in infinity. So like that would be quite difficult to download. So it will just scan all pages and look what CSS classes you use. And here I was wondering why we have this class here, because .vvm has this feature which not all users knows about, because if you need to add some CSS class dynamically based on some expression or some property in the view model, for example, this is loading, then you can use this syntax class dash and then name of the class equals a Boolean expression. So this is just Boolean property, and if it's true, the class would be added here. If it's false, it would be removed. But Tailwind doesn't know anything about this syntax, because this is .vvm specific, so it would not discover that the page needs this animate bounce class. So that's why it has to be here. And once the page is loaded, it will immediately like remove it, because this would be false. But for the purpose of Tailwind, it has to be here. Otherwise, Tailwind would not know that the page needs this CSS class, and it would not render it.
Exactly.
in that generated CSS file.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which allows us to do things like the background colors being any color we want, defined by the value, because otherwise it would need to generate every color possible, which is also a large number of colors.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's it. So all these classes are defined in Tailwind.
Yes.
It reminds me like using inline styles, but this is much shorter, so probably it's more convenient than using inline styles. However, I think that it should be quite useful to define styles like all buttons look like this, they have these classes. So can I define this somehow?
Yes, you can, using Tailwind. If you look into the documentation of Tailwind, if you've never worked with it, you can basically do a sort of meta CSS where you define CSS classes, but with Tailwind classes. It then later generates one class with the name like button or something like that, and every button is styled the same, but the styling is written in Tailwind, and then it processes that styling into raw CSS, and then you can use it, and it works really nicely. I quite like it, and it basically just abstracts this class equals into a CSS page, which defines the different parts.
Okay, so that's cool, because you can define your own classes and compose them from these things. In this application, almost every element there just once, so we didn't do it. There is only one button, one text box, so there is not much value in defining like button is this, because it would be used only once. So but in some of the next episodes we should definitely try to use Tailwind for something more sophisticated, to see how to use it in combination with .vvm, because Tailwind is quite popular, and I think that and I'm happy that the .vvm kind of works with that, because I never tried that. I never used Tailwind actually, so I'm happy to learn that. Okay.
Me neither, yeah.
Okay. And this, I remember this from school when I was like 25 years ago, when I was learning basics of HTML at school, or maybe, 25 years would be something like that. So this element was already supported in Mozilla or Netscape Navigator, I think it was the browser, and in old versions of Internet Explorer as well. So I really love that.
Yes.
And it still works even with .vvm, of course.
We were surprised that it's still supported, yeah.
Yeah. So this is doing this like this experience. So if you need this moving text in the page, definitely this marquee element is exactly what you need. We should make a .vvm component for that.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that's great. And to the next thing, we have talked about SignalR, about injecting services, and then you can call commands on this service. Yeah, this was one thing I noticed. Here there is this text box with change property, which calls the service, and also there is a button which is doing the same thing. Yes. So what was the purpose for that?
Well, basically, this was really quickly written up. We basically had the system of I'm standing at the booth, and when people come up to me and tell me, oh, I would like this feature added or something like that, I would add it dynamically. So I didn't really think about how usable it's gonna be. And this is basically just when we press enter on the changed property, so on the text box when we press enter, it should call the change static command, but also when we press the button ask, it should also call the changed or the clicked static command, which basically we want the same thing. We want to ask the service the same prompt, and we setup was jumping to not was jumping. That was just something we tried with the styling and nothing else. But yeah, it's just basically two ways to call the same function on two different occasions. Yeah.
Okay. So I think there is a better way of doing that, because usually when the user is in this text box and presses enter, you want this button to be invoked, to be called. And by default, let's look in the DevTools. So this DOT text box, let me move it to the correct screen. this dot text box, it renders input type text. Why doesn't, okay, it doesn't want to get bigger, never mind. So like input type text, and this is input type button. And if this would be input type submit, then it would respond to pressing enter, provided that this element would be form. So if we change that, this, I believe the styling will not break if I change it to form. Or maybe to be safer, let's wrap just the content of that. Oh no, it will break down the flex. This would break styling. So like, let's try that. Let's try changing the div to form. And once you are in the form and you press enter in any component, it should search for the closest submit button and click on it automatically. So if you use this is submit button equals true, sorry, or in .vvm you can omit that. So it's submit button like that. So then we don't need this changed handler at all because it's exactly the same as this. And I think that if I save the page and we can reload, so once I do anything and why it's the best framework in the entire universe, and like I should be using this. So when I pressed enter, I believe you heard that sound, then it invoked this button itself. Yeah, and you can see this is the spinning animation and bouncing animation. So this is just because we switched this is loading property in the view model. So it added the CSS class to that element. So you can see Mr. Riganti spinning around and jumping and waiting for the response from the API. Yeah.
And also we have set up enabled on the text box and on the button so that we can't press it or write inside of the input when it's loading.
Yeah.
And it all dynamically changes, so it's really nice user experience when we can just call up a static command and the part of the page it's basically rendered separately because the data packet came in from the static command, so we can dynamically update the part of the page that just is loading is considered.
Yeah. So now it's not loading. So probably we've run out of tokens or something like that.
I don't think so. It's just quite a long way to reach OpenAI.
Really?
Yes.
I was using Azure, OpenAI through Azure, and it didn't take that long. So I believe that maybe I don't see anything in this output.
Maybe we lost the SignalR connection or something like that.
How to debug that? Okay, so let's try that. Let's open the DevTools once again.
Let's see in the
console. Let's see in the console. If something doesn't work, let's see in the console, but I don't see anything here. So maybe we can try to look at the view model. So if you call .vvm state, maybe in this event list there would be something, and there is just connected. So it seems that we are still connected. It's loading true. So probably some problem is here. So like let's try it again. Let's try it again, and let's look in the console if we get something. I don't see anything here. So probably, but we get this message because this changed. So
SignalR sent something.
Yeah.
But maybe are we running the web page?
Yeah, otherwise we would not be connected. We would not have this console window. So let's debug that. Let's show the entire experience. And I like when demos fail because it doesn't create like unrealistic expectations to people who are watching that, because when you try it yourself, probably there would be some errors as well. So like we are very honest, we are very fair. Even our demos sometimes fail. So let's try that. I have rerun the page with debugger. So like now it's starting. Hopefully it will start.
Hey, it looks like it's...
It says connection refused. So that would be...
We are not started yet.
We are not started yet. Okay, let's. Maybe there is something weird happening. So like once again.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed when something broke when I was at the booth because people were walking around and saw that we actually have error messages, so it doesn't look like I'm just copy pasting already prepared code. So it was really nice. Yeah.
So now we get this breakpoint. So let's go here. It's fine. And now we can wait for our first event we get from this API. So we get streaming response created, response in progress, output item added,
So
and now we are
it,
waiting.
It just really takes that long time to reach
Maybe.
OpenAI, yeah.
Because it has to search through the entire universe to see if there aren't any framework that would be actually better than .vvm, and it can take some time. Oh, we get another update, output item done, and now output item edit, content part edit, and now we are receiving some delta. So I will remove this breakpoint, and yeah, you can see that it's in my honest universe spanning opinion. So yeah, we have it confirmed. They wrote it on the internet that it's the best thing. So that's perfect. And a lot of emojis. You cannot be wrong if there is that many emojis. So that's amazing. Okay. So this is completely off because .vvm doesn't need iNotify property changed. Maybe we should add it, but I guess nobody wants to use these getters and setters. We just want to use public string name get set, and that's it. So exactly, yeah. I'm not sure about this feature, but like let's
it was probably something with the signal, and the signal got lost somewhere.
Yeah, probably, because even when I restarted the app, it didn't start. So probably some combination of streaming this video from this machine, and we are also want something else from this machine as well. Yes. So we don't have it separated. That's probably the issue. But I pressed the enter key and it clicked on the submit button, which is exactly what we need. A nice thing would be when we end that this would be reset and we would get focus on that component, but let's try that in some of the next episodes. Okay, yeah. So let's go to the last thing, and this is the markdown part. So ChatGPT was producing this, let me stop it because I don't like Visual Studio in this debugging mode. So it was producing parts of Markdown, and we are translating it to HTML to be able to display it. So where can I find that one?
One of the nice features of DotVVM is how hackable it is. We can basically break it open and use its features ourselves. So as we can see, we have the class pros, which is the Tailwind for Markdown. This is Markdown. Please render it as Markdown with styles added without any work. And we have the data bind there. And we can see that it's Markdown enabled, and the Markdown is the streaming answer. So we basically create our own binding into the Markdown property from our view model streaming answer. And when we take a look into site.js, we can see the code that handles it basically. Yeah.
So basically .vvm is built on Knockout.js, which is quite old, very simple framework for making an MVVM model, view model experience in the browser DOM, document object model. So everything in .vvm works on top of Knockout.js. If I run the page again and use DevTools, you would also see that this, for example, this text box is also powered by Knockout.js, because there we can see data bind enable, and .vvm text box text is our own knockout binding handler, but it basically says take this prompt property from the view model and synchronize it with this component, because MVVM is two-way binding. So nothing prevents you from writing these data bind expressions yourself, or you can build a component, which would be a cleaner approach in my opinion, that would produce this data bind expression from just this like binding, but we can look how to do it in the next episodes. But for now, we are just using a pure knockout.js. We have streaming answer property in our view model, so it will pick it up and it will do the trick. So let's open this site.js. And so can you tell us something about that?
So basically, we're using Showdown, a JavaScript library for rendering Markdown. We had to use this one because it has, I don't know if it's there, but it has, as you update it, it dynamically renders the Markdown, and it doesn't wait for the entire Markdown to be finalized to render it, so it can smooth live preview, yes, as it's highlighted there. And we basically create a setup for the Showdown. We try to do some hacking for the code blocks and for the different parts of the highlight.js to work, because we then use highlight.js within the Markdown to render the code blocks. And then at the end, we create the converter, which is an JavaScript object, which then we can use its methods to convert the text into usable Markdown. And when we scroll down, we can see that we've created KO, which is knockout, dot binding handlers edit Markdown, and on update, we call this value accessor to get Markdown. If it's Markdown enabled, we have to check, we get the converter.makeHTML text. So we then basically do a replacement for the text. We get it from, we basically update it and then immediately switch it into Markdown, and then update it again and switch it to Markdown, and do this very quickly so it isn't visible. Yeah.
So this is just basically the configuration of the Showdown library to support, to do some encoding and to handle these code blocks, and use highlight.js to do the syntax highlighting. So this is that, and this is the initialization of the converter object, which performs the actual conversion. You can call it several times. Here is my Markdown, I want HTML out of it. And this smooth live preview, it's important because we are getting chunks of the response, so the Markdown may be incomplete, and we want this control to account for it, so it will close if you have just the beginning of the code block and it's not finished. And there can be even dangerous characters in HTML which means something, so that's why we need to handle this encoding. And also we need to make sure that these blocks would be correctly closed, otherwise the layout of the page could completely break.
Yes.
So that's a great feature of this library. That's perfect. And we are registering these extensions to that converter. And this binding handler, it's a basic mechanism of Knockout.js, how to make any kind of MVVM interaction. So this name Markdown, it is related to that. So once Knockout.js finds this data bind attribute on any element, it will create binding handlers for this Markdown enabled and for this Markdown. And these binding handlers allow to implement the behavior of this component. So basically, each binding handler, it actually has two methods. One is init. We didn't need it here, so it's not declared, but it would have the similar parameters. And init is called the first time the component appears on the page. So once the page is loaded, this init function would be called. But the components can actually appear later on the page. For example, if you use repeater and add some item in the underlying collection, Knockout will generate the template once more and the component will appear on the page. So even in that case, the init would be called, and that's great because you don't need to look for the components by IDs, which if there is dynamic number of these components, there can be a lot of conflicts. It's very difficult. So this is a very nice approach. So once at any time, if a component with this data bind appears in the page, this init would be called. And then this update handler will be called once the value in this value of this binding expression will change. So this is reference to a property in the view model these properties in the view models are knockout observable, which are objects that can track their own changes. That's basically the replacement. That's the reason why we don't need iNotify property changed in MVVM in the view model, because we in C# we don't work with the change notifications. We need them on the client in the browser, and these are done by knockout observable. So this is knockout observable, which allows the knockout binding handler to read the value and also to subscribe for notifications. So anytime the value in this property will change, then the notification would be invoked, and this update function would be executed again. So anytime this streaming answer property changes, this update function would be called. And to keep doing so, you need to actually read the value. One a little bit annoying feature, but it's very important from the performance reasons, is that it's watching what observables you actually read, and it will keep the change notification, the subscriptions only on these properties which you have accessed. So if you didn't read that value accessor, the update would never be called again, because the knockout would think, okay, so this doesn't depend on this observable, so I will unregister this notification. So it's very important to read this value accessor at all times. It's a little bit annoying, because if you are implementing more complex handler, you can forget about that. And if you place this in some if expression, for example, like that, then the handler will unregister from the change notification. Yeah. So always this should be our first line of every binding handler, because otherwise it would not work. We wanted to be able to turn this behavior on and off. So we also, this all binding accessor will allow you to read other bindings. So we are looking at Markdown enabled, and we just hard-coded true here. But if you want to have this experience, like to be able to turn it on, turn it off, because this could also be observable in the view model, then we can easily do that. So if this true, which is all the time, then we will convert the value of the observable in the view model to HTML and set it to element inner HTML. So this is quite simple component to convert Markdown to HTML, and because we have very nice styling, then it looks as you just saw in the application.
Yep.
Yeah. So a nice next step would be to wrap this into some like Markdown component in .vvm, which is also a thing we can look at next time, because also this script right now is included in the page, I believe, like by default, like maybe
even in the
master page.
Yes.
We always request this script, and it depends on other things. It depends on the Showdown library, it depends on other libraries, and it's included all the time. If you wrap it in the component, you can also make the component to request some scripts. So then the script would be actually included only on the pages where you use this component. So it makes it a little bit more efficient, not in this single page application. This is a single page application, not because of the smooth transitions between the pages, but because there is only a single page. But a weird kind of single page applications. But if there is multiple pages, you don't want to include all the scripts for the entire app if you don't have to, especially on public-facing websites where you need the page to be loaded as soon as quickly as possible.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so where can people find the demo of this? We will post it on some GitHub, I guess.
We will definitely post it on some GitHub and let you know. On the bottom of this video, there will probably be some GitHub link. Yeah. We'll probably clean it up a bit because just now, as we can see, we have some code commented. Yeah. So we'll probably remove it, clean it up a bit, and put it on GitHub. Yeah. So you can check it out yourself. You can try to link it with your ChatGPT API key and try to use it.
Yeah. In order to run it, you will need to use user secrets. So if you right click on that and click on manage user secrets, it will open a secrets file where you need to copy paste this and paste your actual OpenAI API key that you generate in the portal, you need to paste that to the secrets JSON file. Otherwise, the demo would not work. We will not give everyone our David's own OpenAI API key. But the user secrets is a great feature that allows you to do that. Okay, so that's our demo for today. I hope that you enjoyed today's stream. It was fun.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was great. Yeah.
Okay, and we will try to make these events more often, ideally every second Thursday each month. So I think in the middle of January you can look forward. We want to ask you to subscribe on our YouTube channel or subscribe at meetup.com/.vvm. We will post invitations to these events as well. And if you have any ideas on what demos you would want to see on these live streams, let us know. You can just write us in the comments under the video, or we have a forum, .vvm.com. We will post a link in the description as well, so you can suggest topics for this Tom and Dave Discover.vvm shows, and we will be happy to make examples of various .vvm features.
Yeah.
Maybe in the next episodes we will do also some live coding, maybe with AI, we will see.
Yeah, and also they don't need to be super complex. You can ask basic, simple questions and we'll gather them and create one stream where we showcase multiple of them, like we shown today. You can ask how binding works or something like that, and we'll take a look at it. Yeah.
Okay. So subscribe to the channel and see you next time at Tom and Dave Discover.vvm.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.